So Matt, we have a special guest tonight.
We do have a special guest tonight. Glad to be able to get him on. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us right now, live from Pennsylvania, is Libertarian gubernatorial candidate Joe Soloski.
Joe, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Gentlemen. I appreciate it, Spike. Matt, thank you very much for the invitation.
No, absolutely. We're glad that you could take time out of your schedule to join us today.
You got it. So anytime.
Joe, so anytime we have a libertarian on our show for the first time, we always ask, what is it, would you say, that brought you to libertarianism and to the Libertarian Party? Was it kind of an aha moment or sort of a gradual evolution over time? What got you into being a libertarian?
For me, it was gradual. I was a Republican for 40 years, and I watched that party constantly erode and disappoint me. And when I finally hit 2016, I could tell their values, their principles didn't match mine in the least. And I was looking for another party, a place where I could call home and feel comfortable. And the Libertarian Party and its policies, its platform fit me to a T. So it was a very easy change for me. And one of the best moves I ever made. I get to sit back now. I used to get mad at the Democrats or even get mad at my own Republicans. Now I get to get mad and laugh at them both. It's a great place to operate from.
You could just always be right now. Now, whatever happens, you're like, yep, that's what I said would happen. They're just all terrible. Yeah, it's very freeing. It's very liberating not having to defend terrible candidates anymore. So talk to us about what's going on in Pennsylvania. Go ahead.
I was going to say about how long ago did you make the switch? How long ago did you join the Libertarian? Realize you were a Libertarian and then you joined the party?
I think I've been pretty liberty-minded all my life. I felt this way back in the 80s. Okay. I actually thought the Republican Party had some of those principles back then. But again, I watched them constantly erode. June 2nd, 2016. That's the day. That's the day I registered as Libertarian. I saw that Trump was going to be the imminent nominee, and I thought, forget it. I'm jumping off that train. And best move I ever made.
Well, we're glad to have you. So
yeah, absolutely.
You are in Pennsylvania, and obviously things must be, you're obviously seeing some things that are very troubling for you to decide that you want to run for governor of the entire state. Talk to us about what's going on in Pennsylvania right now that led you to want to do that.
Our current Governor Wolf has been using a pretty heavy hand, especially in the last year with his COVID-19 lockdowns. He's decimated businesses. His policies have, and too many people have died in this state, especially in senior care, elder care homes because of their policies. These are the things that need to end. I have been trying to showcase drastically reducing, curtailing the emergency powers of the governor. And amazingly, our state legislature, not only just a few weeks ago, floated a new amendment to be put on the ballot as a referendum to alter our Constitution and to indeed limit the governor's powers. And everything that they put in it is exactly what I've been harping on for months. So it feels pretty good to see that they're doing that. Other things, for example, I'd love to see us eliminate our personal income tax here in this state. Just today, Governor Wolf came out and said that he wants to increase the personal income tax by almost 50%. And he feels he needs that money to fund public schools. It's such an irony. In the last year, schools are closed. They've had less activity than ever. Yes, their revenues have gone down because of these lockdowns and
everyone's revenues have gone down.
Pardon me?
I said everyone's revenues have gone down.
Right.
Absolutely. And rather than look at cost cutting, spending cuts, which we desperately need, our budget's gone up 75% in this state in less than 20 years. We don't have a revenue problem here. We've got a massive spending problem.
Yeah.
I never see them recommend a solution that's a spending cut and giving the taxpayers a break. They always just want more money. And they've gotten that a lot over the last 20 years from different industries. And now this. I'm sorry, our personal income tax should be zero. One of my goals as governor is to make Pennsylvania a tax haven. I want to see Pennsylvania like Florida, like Texas, where companies want to locate here. And the increased employment alone is going to cause us to have more than adequate tax revenues, but all at a lower rate or an elimination of rates. It's not that hard to understand, because as I tell people, even I can understand it.
Right. Yeah. So I live in.
No, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
I live in Florida, and we don't have an income tax here. Before this, I lived in Tennessee, and we didn't have an income tax. Sales tax was like 10.5 or 11.5% or whatever. But you see a lot of businesses try. They want to relocate here to open up for the better taxes. But you also see that you get a bunch of people from Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, who all come down. Illinois is a big one on my side, on my coast, and they all come down looking for the lower taxes for to spend less money. But then they go and they vote for all of the same things that they voted for up there that they are now running from. And it's one of the bigger issues we have here.
Yes, is
that. And do you think that Pennsylvania? Should you be able to pass no income tax in Pennsylvania, which I'm all for 100%? Do you think that would become more of an issue for you guys with New York being right there and Rhode Island, like all of New England, basically?
It's always possible. Those are the kind of things that you can't predict.
Right.
There's no framework to determine that. But, New York's tax rates, they're worse than ours. As bad as ours are, they're worse. So if people come here over the state line because it's more attractive, you like to think that, normal common sense people like us, you like to think that they're going to look at it and say, that's exactly the thing that I don't want to vote for again. I don't want that problem again. Right. But you're right. If they move in and they decide, we want all the freebies, it's just going to be a continually hard battle to wage, and we've got to try to win it every time.
Right. No, I agree.
I am trying to picture, Joe, the average Pennsylvanian who's, as you said, everyone's revenue has gone down. They have either faced job cuts or potential or hour cuts to their hours, or they have had to take a retail job because their higher paying job has been furloughed. So now they're working for DoorDash or something like that instead of working for like an airline or a company that was making them a lot more money, or a manufacturing job that was making them a lot more money, or if they had a small business, probably losing it during this time, or at least seeing a major reduction in revenue, and then being told, great news, everyone, we're going to raise your income tax by roughly half. It is mind-boggling to me that this is how government thinks, right? Like, this is how government thinks the parallel I always use is imagine if, you're sitting at your kitchen table and you go, honey, we need to, we're not making as much money as we're spending. We need to rob our neighbor and also increase our debt limit on our credit cards. And just unironically thinking that that's the way to fix it. Now, let's talk about, because I think, we probably will not be breaking any new ground, three libertarians talking about how much we agree on taxes. But let's talk about these lockdowns. I flew across the country last year and talked to people, including in Pennsylvania, about how these lockdowns are affecting them. But I want to hear from a Pennsylvanian. What has it been like having the government tell you whether or not you're essential in order to protect you?
It's polarizing, to say the very least. Some people actually are praising the man, saying he's looking out for us. Right. But what I see is one business after another closing permanently and their dreams dying. That's not ever a good thing. But then you look at all of the ancillary problems. We've got increased depression, increased family strife, marital strife, domestic abuse, child abuse. These are all problems that were the exact result of these horrible lockdowns. And are obviously unemployment's up, benefits are up, claims are up. Everything has been in a bit of a tailspin. And we've had to fight the governor left and right. Amazingly, he was taken to court at one point, and one of the Pennsylvania courts found his lockdown measures to be unconstitutional, which I thought fantastic. It was almost following what was happening in Michigan. But then he appealed, and he had another court basically back him. And he's now running roughshod over the rest of us. The state legislature has attempted to override him. They put bills on his desk to end these lockdown measures, but unfortunately, he has to sign them to put them into effect, and all he does is veto them. It's a bad system, and that's why we need that referendum on it to amend our Constitution.
I agree. I think that's it's a very powerful thing.
I was going to say Michigan did the same thing where the court said it was unconstitutional, and then Gretchen Whitmer was just like, "I don't care. I'm still doing this."
She just ignored it.
Exactly. It's almost a perfect parallel.
Yeah, she pulled in Andrew Jackson and said, "I don't care what the courts say. I'm just going to do it anyway." And right. I love the justification that these governors use, where they'll say, "We have to do these lockdowns. The COVID cases are getting worse during these lockdowns."
I've taken issue with that every step of the way. And when initially, as you recall, there was limited testing due to availability, and all of a sudden there was more testing available, and up spiked the cases. And I said, well, yes, if you're going to test more, you're going to get more cases, aren't you? It just goes hand in hand. But people who didn't want to hear it refused to hear it. So my approach will be totally different. On my first day in office, if any of these lockdown measures are still in place, I will nullify every single one of them, and Pennsylvania's going back to work. We're going to be open again.
That's good. So, that's what Pennsylvania needs. Go ahead, Matt.
So switching gears just slightly here, there are a bunch of comments in the chat here, or in the comment section here, and they say things like, I'll read the most recent one. Once a cobra bit Joe Soloski's leg. After 5 days of excruciating pain, the cobra died. Like, there are a bunch of these in here, and they are really funny. Like, where is this coming from? Because they're making you like a Chuck Norris of the Libertarian Party, which I'm all for.
I'm all for that.
I'm all for it. I'm just like, every time one comes in, I'm like, don't laugh. You're paying attention to what Joe is saying here.
I'm flattered, and I'm also honored for anyone putting those comments in there. I haven't seen them, but thank you very much. I'm truly flattered.
Oh, yeah, I was like, is this part of their campaign? Like, is this what they're doing? Because this is brilliant. This is great.
Now I've got to get a Chuck Norris outfit, but I'll get to work on that.
Joseph Soloski is going to celebrate winning by dribbling a bowling ball. These are great. I'm voting for. Idea. So someone else said, I'm voting for Joe's beard. So you've got to vote just on the beard.
Just based on them.
It's a good beard. Yeah. It's a good beard.
Hey, they're back in style.
So kind of going back to what we were talking about before. I have family in Pennsylvania. Sadly to say, I already know they won't be voting for you because they won't vote for anybody that I would vote for. Let's just say they're a fan of the lockdowns. But like they live in Philadelphia, and they've got kids who they homeschool because the public schools are too overcrowded, and they can't afford private schools, so they homeschool them. In doing so, wouldn't the 50% tax raise in order to help fund schools more, wouldn't that just cripple the people who are who can't put their kids in schools already?
It's certainly not going to help them. Our property taxes that already are supposed to be funding our public schools are too high. I've known people personally that have lost their homes because they can't pay their darn property taxes, even after they've paid for their homes. Right. And their homes get seized. It's a horrible situation. Now they're trying to say, let's carve out this piece of these income taxes for this. It sounds nice to a lot of people, but it's going to be a disaster. What we also desperately need is to completely overhaul education in this state. We need to overhaul the tax system that funds it. The property tax system is probably the most inequitable system I've seen in my lifetime. And just so you know, I'm a CPA by profession.
Okay.
I operated my own practice for 27 years in the Pittsburgh area before moving to the central part of the state, outside of State College right now. I'm, for the most part, retired and enjoying bringing people to the liberty movement at this stage of my life. When I look at the property tax system, it's horribly inequitable. It needs to be eliminated and replaced with something better. And I understand there is no fair tax system. None. I've never seen one. But we can certainly eliminate the horrific taxes, the horrific tax systems, and try to replace them with something better. But for heaven's sake, we need to be slashing government spending at every turn, because that's what's killing us in this state. We operate at too high of a cost, and they're bleeding the residents dry.
Yep, exactly.
Yep,
exactly.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at some statistics here on the total number per capita of COVID cases since this pandemic started. And what is amazing to me is that for virtually all states, with a few outliers, almost all states are within about a 20 to 30% swing of the total number of cases. This is whether they've never had lockdowns at all, or whether they've had very severe lockdowns, or whether it's been kind of a hodgepodge in between. What really strikes me is that the rate of COVID cases total in Pennsylvania is roughly 7%. Roughly 7% of the population of Pennsylvania has gotten COVID, according to this data, or has been confirmed to have gotten COVID, so it's probably higher. In South Carolina, it's roughly 8%, and we've had no lockdowns whatsoever. And we're also a hub for tourism. Now, you may say, well, that difference between 7% and 8% proves that we need to do these lockdowns. Well, California's is also 8%, and they have had a much worse situation overall with COVID. Michigan's, where's Michigan? Michigan's is also around 6%. They're all within each. Massachusetts, which has had some of the most restrictive lockdowns, around 8%. Florida, which did have some lockdowns early on last summer and has had almost nothing since then, just under 8%. There is no data demonstrating that making everyone stay home, unless they go and crowd into massive retail stores a few times a week, all real close together, that somehow is protecting us from the what appears increasingly to be a largely natural spread of a virus. What are your thoughts on this? Because we are not COVID denialists. We believe COVID's real. We believe it's a very serious thing that should be taken seriously. We just think that these lockdowns, telling everyone stay home until further notice, is not a serious way to long-term address a pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are identical. I've said all along, it's a real virus. It's a real illness. It has big complications, but so do a lot of other things that we've never locked down for. And we could start to make a list of those things very, very easily. I feel the lockdown measures, as far as controlling the spread of the virus, are mostly ineffective. And I know that I could take every possible caution. I could literally lock myself in my basement and I could still get COVID. That doesn't make me immune. It's not going away. We have to deal with it as best we can. But you know what? We've got to live our lives. We're not meant to live in fear. And when I mentioned the ancillary problems of depression, suicides are up, marital strife, family strife, abuse, those things I'm willing to bet are far worse on people than the illness itself. So I'm in total agreement with you. And if I was governor tomorrow, everything here in Pennsylvania, when it comes to these lockdown measures, would change overnight.
Well, that's what we're trying to work on. Two more bits of data, because I have the benefit here of sitting here and looking at my computer, being able to pull out some stuff. Going back to the statewide data, North and South Dakota have very similar populations. North Dakota has been a lot more restrictive in the way that they have dealt with COVID-19. They haven't had full lockdowns, but they've had a lot more mandates and limitations on gathering sizes and things like that. Whereas South Dakota has largely said, here's the information, do what you will with it. North Dakota's rate of spread of COVID is actually slightly higher than South Dakota's.
Wow. And
here's another.
It? And
here's another.
And when you
here's
point out, when you, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
When you point out those two states, I think it's only right. Give credit where credit's due. We've been talking about governors. Governor Kristi Noem has done a great job in South Dakota, leaving her state open, leaving decisions to her residents, and not trying to heavy hand them. I admire her for that, and more governors should be following her lead and trying to emulate her.
And now to be clear, they do have, both states have a higher rate. It's almost as though it didn't really matter whether they had lockdowns or not, and they were just, possibly because of their low populations and the fact that some of their populations are very heavily centralized into a handful of very small, tight-knit communities, would lead for them to have more rate of lockdown, or maybe some other factor. I'm trying to find this data that came up recently for the people that say, but what if it could save lives? Well, we know that according to a study from I'm pulling up their name, according to a study from authors in Duke University, Harvard Medical School, and Johns Hopkins University, which, these are well-known wingnut groups of science deniers, they said that they are estimating that 1.37 million more people will have died from the, as you call it, the ancillary effects of, they said the pandemic, but let's be clear, it's from the lockdowns. 1.37 million more people will die than from the actual virus itself over the course of the next either 10 or 20 years. This is a long-term thing, Joe, and a lot of people don't talk about this. The fact that when you disrupt a community by putting most of the people there out of work for a year plus, there are health and safety and wellness and crime and all sorts of other effects that last not just then, but for several years later. And I'm just so happy to hear that you are talking about this. As you're talking, I'm already envisioning how I'm going to be able to go to Pennsylvania to help you campaign, and it's a great excuse to go back there. I had a great time there when I was doing the ballot access petitions, and I can't wait to come back and help you, Joe. Before we let you go, because you've been a fantastic guest, and thank you so much for coming. We want to give you a chance to plug your campaign. How can people help you if they're inspired by what they hear? If they want to watch you dribble that bowling ball, how can they help you? Where can they find you, and what can they do to help?
Let's not forget the Cobra wrestling too.
Yes.
Now.
Well, of course, the Cobra wrestling.
Of course.
While dribbling
Who could forget?
Ball.
Well, my website is joesoloski.com. That's JoeSoloski, joesoloski.com. Yes, I'm on Facebook, Joseph P. Soloski for governor. And yes, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. My media people, they're the ones dribbling circles around me as far as getting our message out there. They're doing a phenomenal job. But your first spot to stop to check me out is joesoloski.com. You can donate there. You can check out the issues I'm running on. Email me, please. I'll get back to you. I'll talk to you, answer your questions. I want you to be an informed voter, and I really do want to earn your vote. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough.
Real quick, Joe, before you go, you said that you're basically retired, but you were a CPA?
Yes, all my life.
Are you sure you weren't a DJ?
Well, I don't know, Matt. Let me see. There might be something around. It's been a dream. It's been a dream since I was 15, and if I ever get
you have a great speaking voice, and
yeah,
it sounds like you would be somebody like a
voiceover artist or something.
With all the hits from the 80s.
Let me offer this to you. If you ever need some voiceover, I'll make myself available to you.
We definitely appreciate it.
You will be hearing from us because we absolutely do need that. Hey, Joe, thank you so much, everyone. JoeSoloski.com, JoeSoloski.com. I'm not as good as him, but JoeSoloski.com. If you live in or anywhere near Pennsylvania, you actually want to get out there and help him physically, be sure to get in touch with Joe. I'm sure there's all sorts of fun stuff that they can have you doing. If you're able to help online to share the message for Joe Soloski, JoeSoloski.com. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, gentlemen. I truly appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.